The entire history of ancient Japan. The day Japan nearly ended, the sea was crowded with ships. Wooden vessels slammed into one another as waves churned beneath them. Arrows cut through the air. Drums echoed across the water. Commands were shouted, lost, and shouted again. This was the Battle of Dan-no-Ura in the year 1185. Japan's future hung on the tide. At the center of the chaos was a child, Emperor Entoku, carried by attendants loyal to the losing side. When defeat became certain, the sea swallowed him. With the child emperor's death, an era ended. Or so history would later claim. Because what truly ended that day was not the imperial line, but something far more subtle, the meaning of power in Japan. Before Japan had a name, long before emperors, before warriors, before written language, the Japanese islands were quiet. Dense forests covered the land. Mountains divided communities. The surrounding sea isolated the people while also protecting them. During the Ice Age, more than 30,000 years ago, humans crossed temporary land bridges into these islands. They hunted large animals now extinct. They followed the seasons. They left behind stone tools and traces of fire. When the climate warmed, the land bridges disappeared. And something unusual happened. The people stayed. The Jōmon world. For thousands of years, Japan was home to the Jōmon culture. They lived by fishing, hunting, and gathering. They built semi-permanent villages. They understood their environment deeply, and they created pottery, some of the oldest pottery ever found on Earth. The vessels were decorated with twisted cords and bold designs, far earlier than pottery appeared in many farming societies. This puzzled archaeologists. The Jōmon were not agricultural. They did not need storage. They did not build cities. Yet they created beauty. They left no written records. No kings. No monuments. Only questions. Rice, metal, and power. Around the first millennium BCE, the islands changed. New people arrived from the Asian mainland, bringing rice agriculture, metal tools, and new technologies. This marked the Yayoi period. Rice transformed Japan. It created surplus. Surplus created wealth. Wealth created inequality. Land became valuable. Villages competed. Leaders emerged. Weapons became common. Graves became larger. Social classes appeared. For the first time, Japan was no longer just surviving. It was organizing power. Tombs of authority. By the 3rd century CE, regional clans controlled large territories. Some leaders commanded extraordinary labor. They built enormous burial mounds shaped like keyholes, the coffin. These tombs were visible from great distances. They contained weapons, armor, mirrors, and symbols of authority. Only a powerful elite could create them. This period marks the rise of what later became the Imperial institution. Official histories would later claim that the emperor descended from the sun goddess, ruling an unbroken divine line. Archaeology tells a different story. Power came from alliances, from land, from control of rice production. The myth followed the power, not the other way around. Borrowing an empire. As Japan encountered China and Korea, it absorbed new ideas. Writing systems arrived. Buddhism spread. Administrative law was introduced. During the Nara and Heian periods, Japan attempted to model itself after China's imperial system. But the fit was imperfect. The emperor ruled in theory. Real authority drifted elsewhere. Court families gained influence through marriage. Decisions were made behind curtains. Art, poetry, and ritual flourished. Yet beneath the elegance, rural Japan changed. Local warriors grew stronger. The court grew distant. Taxes burdened farmers. Power was quietly slipping away. The rise of the samurai. The warriors who rose were not born noble. They were hired protectors, land managers, men who fought in exchange for loyalty and reward. Over generations, these warriors, the samurai, became the real power brokers. Japan fractured into rival clans. Conflict spread across regions. The imperial court could no longer control events. This tension erupted into civil war. The Genpei War pitted two great families, the Taira and the Minamoto, against each other. The conflict would decide who truly ruled Japan. The shogun's secret. The war ended at sea. At Dan-no-Ura, the Taira were defeated. The child emperor died. The Minamoto emerged victorious. Soon after, Japan gained its first shogun, a military ruler. The emperor remained, but only as a symbol. Power had shifted permanently. Japan became a warrior-led state. while maintaining the appearance of imperial continuity. This dual system, symbolic authority above, military power below, would define Japan for centuries. And it raised a quiet question historians still examine today. Did the imperial line truly end at sea? Or did Japan simply learn how to hide change behind tradition? The answer shaped everything that followed. And in the next chapter, we explore how Japan became a land ruled by warriors, while insisting nothing had changed at all. The illusion of continuity. Japan did not announce its transformation. There was no declaration, no coronation, no public ending. The emperor remained on the throne. The rituals continued. The myths were repeated. To the outside world, nothing had changed. But beneath the surface, power had moved. And it moved without ceremony. This quiet shift would define Japan's political identity for centuries. Minamoto no Yoritomo's choice. After the Battle of Dan no Yura, the Minamoto clan stood alone. Its leader, Minamoto no Yoritomo, held military dominance over Japan. He could have taken the throne. He did not. Instead, he created something new. He accepted the title of shogun, military commander of the realm. Officially, he ruled in service to the emperor. In practice, the emperor approved what Yoritomo had already decided. This decision changed Japan forever. Power no longer needed a crown. Two Japans, one country. From this moment forward, Japan existed as two worlds. One was ceremonial, centered in Kyoto, built on tradition, poetry, ritual, and divine ancestry. The other was practical, centered in Kamakura, built on swords, land control, and loyalty. Yoritomo ruled from Kamakura by design. Distance weakened the old court. Distance strengthened the new order. The emperor remained sacred. The shogun became necessary. The samurai state. Yoritomo reorganized Japan's warriors. Samurai were given land and authority. In return, they pledged loyalty. This loyalty was personal, not ideological. It was enforced, not symbolic. Justice was swift. Disobedience carried consequences. The system created stability, but it relied on constant balance. And balance is fragile. Death and the vacuum of power. When Yoritomo died, the structure he built was tested. His sons were young. Rival families moved quickly. Behind the title of shogun, another power rose. The Hojo clan. They did not rule openly. They ruled as regents. They controlled the shogunate. They controlled the court. They controlled succession. The shogun became a figurehead. The emperor faded further into distance. Japan was now ruled by shadows. A system without a center. This layered system created confusion. Who truly ruled? Who held legitimacy? Who bore responsibility? Authority was divided. Responsibility was blurred. And when crisis came, there was no single voice. That crisis arrived from the sea. The Mongol threat appears. In the 13th century, the Mongol Empire dominated Asia. China had fallen. Korea had submitted. Japan received a message from Kublai Khan. Submit peacefully, or face destruction. Japan refused. Not because it was confident, but because submission threatened legitimacy. The first invasion, in 1274, Mongol forces landed on Japanese shores. Their warfare was unfamiliar. They fought in formations, used coordinated signals, deployed early explosives. Samurai warfare was individual and ritualized. The shock was immediate. After fierce resistance, the Mongols withdrew. But they were not defeated. The second invasion, 7 years later, the Mongols returned. This time with a massive fleet. Japan prepared for annihilation. Then, a powerful storm struck. Ships were destroyed. Supplies were lost. The invasion collapsed. The event became known as kamikaze, divine wind. But the aftermath was less divine. Victory without reward. The samurai expected land and wealth. There was none. Japan had defended itself, but gained nothing. The shogunate had no resources to reward loyalty. Resentment grew. Trust faded. The system that protected Japan now weakened it. An emperor challenges the shadows. In Kyoto, Emperor Go-Daigo watched carefully. He believed the shogunate had failed. He believed authority should return to the throne. He rebelled. Against expectation, he succeeded. The shogunate collapsed. The emperor ruled again. This moment became known as the Kenmu Restoration. Why restoration failed? The restoration lasted 3 years. Go-Daigo spoke of tradition. The samurai demanded land. The emperor restored ceremonies. The warriors wanted rewards. The gap was fatal. Japan had changed. The throne had not. Betrayal and division. One of Go-Daigo's generals turned against him. Ashikaga Takauji seized Kyoto, declared himself shogun. Japan split. Two emperors claimed legitimacy. Two courts ruled separately. This was the era of the northern and southern courts. For decades, Japan lived divided. Authority shattered. When the Ashikaga eventually prevailed, unity returned only in name. Central power was weak. Local authority expanded. War became constant. Loyalty became flexible. Japan entered the Sengoku period. The age of warring states. Daimyo ruled their own lands. Castles spread across the country. Alliances shifted overnight. This was an age of ambition. Old rules collapsed. New strategies emerged. Foreign firearms arrived. Merchants gained influence. Tradition struggled to survive. Oda Nobunaga breaks the past. Oda Nobunaga rose from obscurity. He rejected tradition, used firearms, crushed old powers without hesitation. He destroyed temples that resisted him. He broke ancient alliances. Japan had never seen such speed. And then he was betrayed, killed by his own general. The work continues. Toyotomi Hideyoshi succeeded Nobunaga. He unified Japan, ruled as regent. But his legitimacy was fragile. Born a commoner, he sought glory abroad. His invasions failed. Resources drained. When he died, his heir was a child. The final strategist, Tokugawa Ieyasu, waited. At Sekigahara, he defeated his rivals. It was the largest battle Japan had ever seen. Afterward, Tokugawa became shogun. This time, the system held. Peace through control. Tokugawa rule brought peace. But peace came with control. Movement was restricted. Daimyo were watched. Foreign influence was limited. Japan closed itself off. The country slept. For over 2 centuries. The pressure beneath silence, order returned. Violence faded. But pressure grew beneath the surface. No system remains frozen forever. And when Japan finally woke, the world beyond its shores had changed completely. And it would not wait. A land finally still, Japan was quiet. For the first time in centuries, there was no marching army, no burning city, no civil war tearing the land apart. Castles stood intact. Roads were safe. Fields were planted without fear. Peace had arrived. But it was not freedom. It was containment. Tokugawa Ieyasu's understanding. Tokugawa Ieyasu knew something others had not. Victory did not end war. Systems did. After Sekigahara, he did not rule through celebration or charisma. He ruled through structure. Every decision was designed to prevent the next conflict. He became shogun in 1603. Japan entered the Edo period. 2 centers of power, the emperor remained in Kyoto. Sacred, symbolic, politically silent. The shogun ruled from Edo. Practical, administrative, absolute. This separation was intentional. The throne provided legitimacy. The shogunate exercised control. Together, they created stability. The daimyo problem, regional lords still existed. They controlled land. They commanded samurai. They remembered war. Tokugawa did not destroy them. He managed them. And management was more effective than force. Sankenkotai. Control without battle. The rule was simple. Every daimyo had to live in Edo every other year. Their families lived there permanently. Travel was expensive. Movement was monitored. Resources were drained. Rebellion became logistically impossible. Peace was enforced quietly. Hostages without chains. This system did not require prisons. Families were treated with honor. Residences were elegant. Ceremonies were respected. But the message was clear. Obedience ensured safety. Disobedience endangered everything. Control wore a polite face. Samurai without war, the samurai changed. Their swords remained. Their purpose did not. They became administrators, tax collectors, officials. Many struggled to adapt. Honor remained. Opportunity faded. The warrior class slowly hollowed out. Symbols replaced function. The sword was no longer a weapon. It became a reminder of identity, of hierarchy, of a past that no longer existed. Tradition survived, even as its purpose disappeared. Closing the gates, Tokugawa rule extended beyond land. It reached the sea. Japan limited contact with the outside world. Foreigners were expelled. Christianity was banned. Japanese citizens were forbidden to leave. This policy became known as Sakoku. Isolation was not fear. It was strategy. Controlled contact, Japan did not fully disappear. Limited trade continued through carefully selected ports. Foreign knowledge was filtered. Information moved slowly. Japan watched the world from a distance and chose not to join it. Life inside the silence. For more than 250 years, Japan lived under this system. Cities expanded. Education spread. Literacy increased. Art flourished. Theater thrived. Woodblock prints captured daily life. The country was orderly, predictable, stable. Pressure beneath peace, but peace created tension. Population grew. Resources strained. Natural disasters struck. The system did not adapt. Rules remained frozen. Reality did not. A broken social order. Merchants gained wealth. Samurai remained poor. Those with money lacked status. Those with status lacked money. The hierarchy no longer reflected reality, but changing it threatened order. So nothing changed. A world moving without Japan. Beyond Japan's shores, the world transformed. Industrialization reshaped economies. Steamships crossed oceans. Weapons evolved. Empires expanded rapidly. Japan remained feudal. The gap widened. The black ships appear. In 1853, ships appeared on the horizon. American ships. Armed. Modern. They carried a message. Open your country, or be forced open. Japan had no answer. Panic at the center. The shogunate debated. The court hesitated. The daimyo disagreed. There was no unified response. Japan signed unequal treaties. Isolation ended overnight. The system cracked. The return of the emperor. Opposition grew. Some demanded modernization. Others demanded expulsion of foreigners. The emperor, silent for centuries, became a symbol, a rallying point for change. The fall without collapse. The Tokugawa did not fall in flames. They fell through loss of legitimacy. Confidence faded. Authority weakened. Belief dissolved. In 1868, the shogunate ended. The Meiji Restoration began. Awakening at high speed, Japan transformed rapidly. Feudalism ended. Samurai lost status. The military modernized. Railroads spread. Factories rose. Schools expanded. Japan ran toward modernity. And it caught up. Ancient instincts, new forms, but the past did not disappear. Fear of chaos remained. Control felt necessary. Unity felt sacred. Old instincts returned, disguised as progress. Japan had awakened, but history was not finished with it. A dangerous confidence, strength brought ambition. Survival became justification. Power became protection. Japan stepped onto the world stage, carrying ancient memories into a modern age. And the cost of that journey was still ahead. Awakening through fear, Japan awakened. But it did not awaken with hope. It awakened with fear. Fear shaped by centuries of memory. Fear of invasion. Fear of humiliation. Fear of collapse. This fear had protected Japan before. Now it would drive it forward. The promise of the Meiji Restoration. The Meiji Restoration promised renewal. The emperor returned to the center. Feudal borders vanished. Old hierarchies dissolved. Japan declared it would stand equal with the world. Not someday. Not slowly. Immediately. Speed without precedent. Change came at breathtaking speed. Western legal systems were adopted. Modern education spread nationwide. Factories replaced fields. Railways crossed the land. Japan did not debate modernization. It embraced it as survival. The ancient instinct remains. Fear sharpened resolve. The first test. War with China. In 1894, Japan went to war with Qing China. China was ancient, vast, internally strained. Japan was smaller, organized, modern. The outcome shocked the world. Japan won. Confidence is born. Victory brought territory, influence, recognition. But it brought something more powerful. Confidence. Japan believed it had escaped Asia's fate. Facing a European empire. In 1904, Japan faced Russia, a European power, a global empire. Few believed Japan could succeed. History proved otherwise. A world reconsiders Japan. Japan's victory stunned the world. For the first time, a non-Western nation defeated a major European power using modern warfare. Japan had entered a new category, great power. Victory's hidden shadow. But success carried consequences. Victory fueled ambition. Ambition intensified fear. Japan now believed expansion was protection. Standing still felt dangerous. The emperor became sacred beyond question. Ancient symbolism fused with modern nationalism. The result was disciplined and rigid. Narrowing paths. By the 1930s, options narrowed. Economic pressure increased. Global tensions rose. Military voices grew louder. Each decision felt defensive. Together, they led forward. The war in China. Japan entered prolonged conflict in China. The war drained resources, stretched manpower, strained morale. But withdrawal felt impossible. Stopping meant weakness. Trapped by momentum, the deeper Japan went, the harder retreat became. History had taught Japan this lesson well. The global war begins. When global war erupted, Japan faced a choice. Pause, reconsider, or advance. Japan chose forward. Early success, rising strain. At first, Japan advanced quickly. But industrial realities shifted the balance. Resources dwindled. Pressure mounted. Strain spread. The ancient fear returned. Facing the unthinkable, total defeat. Total humiliation. The end of Japan itself. These were the fears that had shaped centuries. Exhaustion, not erasure. Change came not from conquest alone, but from exhaustion. Japan had reached the limit of endurance. Rebuilding quietly, Japan rebuilt quietly. Factories returned. Cities rose. Education expanded. Strength came from reconstruction. Memory without silence. The past did not vanish. It lived in memory. In restraint. Some stories were spoken carefully. Others remained unspoken. A new lesson learned. Japan learned something new. That survival did not always require dominance. That strength could come from restraint. That adaptation could replace control. But the cost had been immense. A question that remains: did Japan escape its ancient cycle? Or did it learn to manage it differently? Because history does not disappear. It adapts. History never sleeps. Ancient choices still whisper in the present. Fear, unity, control, survival. History, no matter how carefully shaped, never truly sleeps. Endurance, not ending. Japan did not end. It endured. This alone sets it apart. Across history, entire civilizations rose and vanished. Their languages faded. Their cities crumbled. Their cultures survived only in fragments, studied, reconstructed, imagined. Japan followed a different path. It bent. It adapted. It continued. And endurance, while powerful, always carries a price. After defeat, uncertainty. In 1945, Japan stood at the edge of something unknown. For the first time in its recorded history, it was not directing its own future. The war had ended. The empire was gone. Certainty had dissolved. Japan faced a silence deeper than defeat. The emperor transformed. The emperor spoke. And in doing so, transformed himself. Once divine, once unquestioned, now human. This was not simply political change. It was psychological rupture. A foundation thousands of years old shifted in a single moment. Power rewritten. The military was dismantled. The state was rewritten. Authority was limited by law. A new constitution emerged. War was renounced. Control was restrained. On paper, the past was broken. But history does not live on paper. Where history actually lives. History survives in habits. In what societies fear. In what they avoid. In what they never say aloud. Documents can change overnight. Mental structures take generations. Japan carried its past forward quietly. An island mindset. Japan's identity was shaped by geography. Islands separated by water. Mountains dividing communities. Limited land. Limited resources. Isolation fostered unity. Unity fostered discipline. Discipline fostered control. These traits were protective. They were also limiting. Order over chaos. For centuries, Japan believed chaos was the greatest threat. Order meant safety. Obedience meant survival. Stability mattered more than freedom. This belief shaped feudal rule. It shaped imperial authority. It shaped social behavior. And it did not disappear. Post-war silence. The years after the war were quiet. Not empty, but restrained. Japan rebuilt without spectacle. Without loud declarations. Without triumph. Silence became a strategy. Rebuilding with ancient tools. Factories replaced ruins. Technology replaced weapons. Efficiency replaced conquest. But the values remained familiar. Discipline. Collective responsibility. Personal sacrifice. The same mindset that once built castles now built industries. Economic resurrection. The world watched in disbelief. Japan recovered faster than expected. Then faster than anyone believed possible. By the late 20th century, Japan was an economic power. But success carried strain. The weight of expectation. Work became identity. Endurance became virtue. Rest became guilt. Failure was not just economic. It was moral. These pressures echoed older systems. Echoes of the samurai code, honor, duty, self-sacrifice. These were once the values of warriors. Now they shaped office workers. The language changed. The structure remained. A quiet relationship with the past. Japan does not ignore its history. It approaches it carefully. Some topics are discussed with restraint. Some debates remain unresolved. Some memories are handled softly. This is not erasure. It is caution. Survival through silence. Silence once protected Japan from chaos, from division, from collapse. That instinct remained. Silence became continuity. The strength of continuity. Ancient Japan offers a rare lesson. That survival can outlast conquest. That identity can persist through transformation. That continuity can be power. But continuity also carries risk. When control becomes fragile, control, when absolute, becomes brittle. Systems that fear disorder often struggle with change. Silence can delay reckoning. Fear can shape policy. History warns, even as it instructs. The emperor remains. The emperor still exists. Not as ruler, not as commander, but as symbol. Just as before. The role changed. The meaning softened. The thread continued. Why continuity matters in Japan. Japan values balance over extremes. Adaptation over erasure. Survival over perfection. This is not accidental. It is cultural memory. From villages to cities, from Jōmon villages, to feudal domains, to modern megacities, Japan carried itself forward. Layer upon layer. Era upon era. Nothing fully erased. Everything reshaped. Geography still speaks. The sea still surrounds the islands. The mountains still divide the land. Physical isolation remains. Psychological memory follows. History is pattern. Japan's history does not shout. It whispers. Through patterns. Through repetition. Through restraint. Fear. Control. Endurance. Beyond emperors and warriors. Ancient Japan was never only about rulers. It was about choices. Isolation or engagement. Resistance or adaptation. Control or flexibility. Every era faced these questions. Choosing survival again and again, again and again, Japan chose survival. Even when it meant pain. Even when it meant surrender. Even when it meant starting over. The final truth, Japan did not disappear because it never tried to freeze itself in time. It allowed itself to change. Slowly, carefully, reluctantly. History without an ending. Japan's history is not finished. Civilizations that learn how to endure do not end. They continue, quietly, observantly, prepared, waiting for the next moment when survival will demand a new choice.